My name's Emily. I'm 28 years old, and the sound of my own heartbeat was so loud I thought the whole office could hear it. "You're fired for theft," my boss yelled, his voice echoing in the dead silence of the conference room. His finger was pointed at me, shaking with a rage I didn't understand. My project files were spread across the table, my name on them, but he was claiming them as his own. I was just a ghost, a thief, but he had no idea what was in that patent application. It all started so differently. 6 months ago, I was just another junior engineer at a large tech firm, excited to be there. I loved my job. I loved the challenge of solving problems that seemed impossible. I lived in a small apartment and spent most of my evenings sketching designs in a worn-out notebook. My mom, Susan, a kind woman of 65, would call me every night. "You're working too hard, honey," she'd say. "I'm close to something big, Mom," I'd tell her, my voice buzzing with excitement. Something that could change how we store energy. And I was. I was developing a new type of battery material. My direct supervisor was Mark, a 52-year-old man who had been with the company for 20 years. He had a reputation for being tough, but I just wanted to impress him. I wanted to prove my worth. At first, he barely noticed me. I was just another face in the lab, but as I started making progress, his attitude shifted. He would walk by my desk more often, glancing at my screen. "What's this, Emily?" he asked one afternoon, pointing to a complex chemical equation I was working on. His tone wasn't curious. It felt possessive, like he was inspecting something that already belonged to him. I explained the concept, my passion making my words tumble out. He just nodded slowly, a strange look in his eyes. "Keep me updated," he said before walking away. That was the first red flag, but I was too naive to see it. A few weeks later, I had a breakthrough. It happened at 3 a.m. in the lab after a 16-hour day. The simulation finally worked. The new material was stable, efficient, and cheaper to produce than anything on the market. My hands were shaking as I saved the data. I felt a pure, unfiltered joy that I had never experienced before. I had done it. This was my creation, born from sleepless nights and endless calculations. The next morning, I couldn't wait to tell my boss. I walked into his office, my report in hand. "Mark, I did it!" "The prototype simulation is a success," I said, my voice trembling with excitement. He took the report from me without a word. He read through it, his expression unreadable. For a moment, I thought he would smile, that he would congratulate me. Instead, he looked up and said, "Good, leave this with me. I'll take it from here." My heart sank. Take it from here, but I still need to run the physical tests. This is just the first step, I stammered. I felt a cold dread creeping up my spine. "The company will handle the next steps. You've done your part," he said dismissively, placing my report into his drawer and turning back to his computer. I was dismissed, just like that. I walked out of his office feeling hollow. The joy from the night before was gone, replaced by a gnawing anxiety. That evening, I called my mom. "I think my boss is going to steal my work," I whispered into the phone. "What do you mean, honey?" my mom asked, her voice full of concern. I explained everything, how he took my report, how he shut me out of the project. "You have to protect yourself, Emily," she said firmly. "You have all your notes, right? Your original files?" Her words gave me a spark of strength. She was right. That night, I gathered every piece of evidence I had, my original notebooks with dated entries, the raw data files on my personal hard drive, and every email I had sent to my boss documenting my progress. Then I did something bold. I used my savings to file a provisional patent application online. I listed myself as the sole inventor. It was a long shot, but it was the only thing I could think of to protect my creation. The next few weeks at work were hell. My boss completely ignored me. He assigned me to meaningless data entry tasks, keeping me as far away from the lab as possible. I watched from a distance as a special team was brought in to work on his new project. The whispers started. People would look at me and then quickly look away. I was being isolated, pushed out. I felt like I was screaming, but no one could hear me. The anxiety was eating me alive. Then the day came. I was called into the main conference room. The entire executive team was there. My boss stood at the head of the table, a smug look on his face. My project files, reprinted with his name on the cover, were in front of every chair. As you all know, he began, I have been working tirelessly on a revolutionary new battery technology. My blood ran cold. He was doing it. He was taking credit for everything in front of the entire company leadership. He presented my work, my data, my conclusions as his own. I just sat there frozen in my chair. It felt like an out-of-body experience. I couldn't believe this was happening. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. People were patting him on the back. He was a hero, and I was invisible. That's when my world came crashing down. He turned to me, his face a mask of fake disappointment. However, he said, his voice dripping with venom, it has come to my attention that a junior employee, Emily, attempted to access and steal these proprietary files for her own gain. The room went silent. Every eye was on me. My face burned with shame. I tried to speak, but no words came out. My throat was tight, and I felt like I was choking. You're fired for theft, he yelled, pointing that trembling finger at me. Security will escort you out. We don't tolerate thieves at this company. My heart shattered into a million pieces. I stood up, my legs feeling like jelly. I could feel the tears welling in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of him. I gathered my purse, my dignity in tatters. Just as security was about to lead me away, the main door to the conference room opened. In walked Mr. Harrison, the 68-year-old CEO of the entire company, a man I had only ever seen in company-wide emails. He looked around the room, sensing the tension. "Mark, what's going on here?" he asked, his voice calm but authoritative. "Sir," my boss said, puffing out his chest, "I was just handling a serious internal matter. This employee was attempting to steal my project." Mr. Harrison's eyes fell on the document spread across the table. He picked one up, his brow furrowed in concentration as he scanned the technical specifications. "This is impressive work, Mark, truly groundbreaking. I just reviewed the official patent filing that came in this morning." My boss's smile widened. This was his moment of triumph. He thought he had won. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. Everything depended on this single moment. Mr. Harrison continued to flip through the pages, a thoughtful expression on his face. He paused, looking intently at the cover page of the official patent filing. He looked up, his gaze sweeping across the room until his eyes locked directly onto mine. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. He looked back down at the patent, then back up at me. Then he looked at my boss. "Mark," the CEO said slowly, his voice low and dangerous, "can you explain why the inventor's name on this patent is Emily Carter?" The silence in the room was a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. Every person who had been applauding my boss just moments before was now frozen, their eyes darting between him, the CEO, and me. The color drained from Mark's face, leaving it a sickly pale gray. He opened his mouth, but only a dry, croaking sound came out. It's a mistake," he finally stammered, his voice a pathetic whisper. "A clerical error. She must have hacked the system, tried to put her name on my work after I fired her." The desperation in his voice was thick. He was throwing anything at the wall, hoping something would stick. Mr. Harrison didn't even look at him. His gaze remained on me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt seen. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice calm and steady, "is this your work?" A deep breath filled my lungs, pushing out the fear and humiliation. A small, quiet voice emerged. My voice. Yes, sir, it is. I stood a little taller. I have the original notebooks, the time-stamped raw data files, and a full email chain documenting my progress, all of which I sent to Mark over the last 6 months. The CEO nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. Then he asked me a highly specific technical question about the material's molecular structure, a detail buried deep on page 72 of my report. I answered it without hesitation, explaining the reasoning behind my approach. Then he turned to my boss. Mark, can you elaborate on the catalytic process she just described? The room watched as my boss imploded. He couldn't answer. He fumbled with words, trying to piece together phrases he'd read in my report. It was a painful, agonizing display of his fraud. The lie had completely unraveled. There was nowhere left for him to hide. Mr. Harrison let the silence hang for a moment longer before he spoke again, his voice now cold as ice. Mr. Johnson, I find theft of company property to be a serious offense, but the theft of a person's spirit, of their hard work, and the attempt to publicly destroy their reputation, that I find unforgivable. He looked toward the security guards who were still standing awkwardly by the door. Gentlemen, he said, his voice ringing with authority, Mr. Johnson's employment here is terminated effective immediately. Please escort him out of the building. The poetic justice was so sharp, it almost made me gasp. The same words he had used to humiliate me were now being used to seal his fate. My boss didn't even protest. He just deflated, a broken man, as security led him from the room he thought was the stage for his greatest triumph. Once he was gone, Mr. Harrison turned to me. The entire executive team was watching, their expressions a mixture of shock and embarrassment. Miss Carter, the CEO said, a hint of warmth returning to his voice, on behalf of this company, I want to offer you my sincerest apology. What happened here was a failure of management, and it will be rectified. He walked over and extended his hand. That position, he said, gesturing to Mark's now empty chair at the head of the table, is now vacant. I want you to lead this project. It's your discovery. It's only right that you see it through. The tears I had been fighting back finally fell, but they weren't tears of shame or sadness. They were tears of pure, overwhelming relief. I shook his hand, my own trembling. Thank you, sir, I whispered. Thank you. That evening, I sat in my car in the parking lot and called my mom. When she answered, I couldn't even speak at first. I just sobbed. Honey, what is it? What happened? She asked, panic in her voice. They're good tears, Mom, I finally managed to say. I told her everything. I told her about the accusation, the CEO, the patent, and the new job. I could hear her crying on the other end of the line, a sound of a mother's pride and relief that I will never forget. The next Monday, I walked back into that office, not as a junior engineer, but as the head of the new Advanced Energy Division. The whispers that followed me were different now. They were whispers of respect. It wasn't an easy path, but it was mine, and I was ready. I learned a brutal lesson about trust and the importance of protecting my own work. But I also learned that the truth, no matter how buried, has a way of coming to light, especially when you have the courage to stand by it. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to fight to be heard? Until the next story.